We don't consider ourselves a radio company, we're a networking company. When you start bringing UAVs in mass into the market, when you start looking at UGVs and you realize that everything can have a camera and have a sensor, you start thinking, how do you then integrate all that data into a single cop? 500 meters that way, there could be a UGV that has its own sensors that I'm not getting. What's the ideal thing there? Is if I can get all of those sensors on the same flat network, whether it's a UGV, whether it's a person, we're efficiently moving that data correctly through the network to people who need it. And then everyone can see everything. It's a tactical superiority for decision making is what we're trying to provide.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to DIB Innovators. Today I've got a special guest, Jon Patrick, retired Army Colonel and VP of Business Development for Army and SOCOM at Persistent Systems. Persistent builds the Wave Relay, secure mobile mesh networking platform running in over 48 countries and is at the center of the Army's next-gen command and control effort. Yeah, Jon spent 26 years in the acquisition system before coming over to industry, about 18 months ago?
That's correct, yeah.
So that's awesome. And he knows where the bodies are buried on both sides. So let's dig into it and figure it out. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate your time and excited to be here.
All right. So you had a full career inside the machine, DCMA, Army, HR Command, before coming to Persistent. What was revealed to you when you crossed to the industry side about defense procurement that you didn't really see from inside the government?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, my career spanned both program management and contracting. So I got a little bit of a flavor of kind of both sides of the requirements, not only the requirements generation, but then putting it on contract, right? I think as I've sit through multiple technical exchange with the government, I think what really jumps out is how much words matter to contractors. And when I say words, it's revealing and being transparent on requirements, where things are going, especially for small businesses and the investments of your internal IRAD dollars. It's because for Persistent, we're a bootstrapped company. There's no VC in our backing. That's really important to us, right? To understand, where the PMs believe they're going, where the requirements writers see their things are going, where the future fight is going to be. What does the division as a unit of action mean from a technology perspective as it comes to a network, right? So I think the words that matter, that come out of leaders' mouths and how much they change and what that impact is on small businesses has been really revealing versus sitting on the other side and being the guy who used to talk those words and maybe now seeing how impactful those can be.
Yeah, no more just pontificating about your idea. You could take a customer and zip them on the military side, take customer and run them off the end of the cliff.
That's right. Yeah, real easy to, that valley of death piece, putting small, especially from the small business perspective, with the limited resources they have. And that's a fragile time, right, as they transition. And that's, fraught with a lot of craziness in there. So.
Oh yeah, it's so hard to figure out. That I just think, I spent time at Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin, but just new bit, very different than the primes. The primes may be changing. It was a while ago, but they very much waited till there was a requirement document and something the government said to go do. My perspective was very little IRAD was spent on developing new capabilities that weren't on the books. Like it had to be driven by requirements. We're now, the Andurils and all these small businesses that are out there, defense tech boom, are creating capability gaps or capabilities where there are gaps and then sharing it where there hasn't been a requirement for. So it's really a unique time. I definitely from the acquisition side.
Yeah, things are moving fast. There's no more base +4 contracts. Typically, it's all tranche buys, 1 to 2 year requirements, prove it or lose it type of environment. So it takes, as great as it is to open up that competition and bring COTS solutions in, it's still a little bit scary on this side knowing that the base +4s aren't there, right? You're proving it every 2 years, right? Things like that. So the dynamics change, the environment's starting to change, right? It's maybe not prolific outside of NGC2, but it's we're definitely in a Wild West portion of it right now. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, when you say for folks, base +4, what are you referring to?
So a typical program of record requirement was a base +4 contract, a base year, and then 4 years out, we would know what the forecasting, the number of units per year was, so that a company can lock in long-term supply deals and forecasting. And I would know 3 years from now that the Army's going to buy 4,000 MPU-5s from me because that's what's been put on the P forms and that's in the out year forecast. That's no longer the case anymore, right? We're hearing we're buying 1 to 2 year tranches, and if your product performs, then you can recompete for the next 2-year tranche. If it doesn't, you're not, right? So the calculus is different, right, in terms of from a company's perspective on how we approach that, the risk factors, especially for non-VC backed companies, right? What does that mean? Where are you putting your dollars? Or for future technological, the IRAD side of things, where are you investing? It's opened up the aperture for lots of companies, but there's some increased risk there, even there with how we're doing it, from my perspective. Yeah, being on both sides.
Yeah, well, I think that's been, let's talk about this for a little bit because I think it's so interesting. Because you also have a lot of, we're talking about mass a lot more in defense acquisition. So that's the other problem. If you're doing these short load contracts, but you need to build and prove a capability to build 10,000 widgets a year, 20,000 widgets a year, which is a material investment, probably, if it's hardware, in manufacturing facilities and capabilities. Yet it could go away. Like, how do you see that playing out? How do you see that?
Yeah, we've had plenty of discussions with senior leaders about the natural friction there, right, of what you just talked about. I'll tell you, it's not that it's unrecognized by DoW leadership. They recognize that fact that if you can't give me a forecast, pricing is a discussion at that point, so I can't lock in those long-term rates, right? I can't get to maybe some of that mass scaling because I'm not going to invest in my production facilities if I don't know what's coming in 3 years from now, right? I think those are acknowledged. I just think we're still in because of PCC5, at least on the Army side, because of PCC5, what happened last year, that real fast switch to NGC2, that deep dive by Army on, COTS. So Project Convergence Capstone 5 last year at the National Training Center. A company like ours, we went out of hide as Persistent to be the network backbone for an experiment. So PCC5 run by Army Futures Command out at a National Training Center was a battalion plus combined arms breach, right? The most difficult maneuver to actually execute correctly because of all the coordination that has to be done, right? With sister units or integrated units, bringing in engineer platoon, you're merging Bradley platoons with armor platoons to execute a breach. It's very, very difficult. We were brought in to be the network for that, right? The battalion level and below network. So there's a ton of experimentation going on there. And I think that's really what kickstarted, as well as, the app layer, the integrated data layer. Palantir was there, Anduril was there, right? They were all riding on our network. That was the precursor, I think, to what it was the precursor to what 4th Infantry Division is doing right now with General Ellis. General Ellis was there at the time, right, at PCC5. That was demonstrated to the Army leadership, and I think what opened folks' eyes out there, was the precursor to what we see now. Massive experimentation going on at 4th Infantry Division in Colorado. A big push to PCC6, which is happening next month at the National Training Center to validate a brigade size element. So now, if you think we're going from a battalion level minus to a brigade size element in the box at National Training Center, doing a full up rotation to really test the NGC2 stack to see if it's working, right? And to understand how it does against the same OP4 that any other Army brigade would go against. So exciting times, but a lot crammed into the last 12 months as well, right?
Yeah. For listeners, battalion versus brigade size to help scope the size.
So battalion, you're talking, depending on the type of unit, right? Let's go from 500 or less to several thousand, depending on light, heavy unit type piece. So you're going to have triple, quadruple the size plus support elements as well, right? Massive amount. For us, you're talking the difference between 150 nodes to 750 nodes. When I say nodes, think this little guy here, the MPU-5, right? 120 of these out on vehicles or equivalents to 750 of these out on at the unit level. So massive scalability challenges, networking constraints, things like that. So huge.
Well, you have a lot of acquisition experience. Like you said, you've got program management experience. I'm sure pretty hot commodity coming out into the commercial side for companies. You got the primes, they provide different pay. What drew you to a bootstrap company, 200 person nominally, however you go, 200-300 people, on radio hardware? Why was that answer?
That's a great question. And mentors coming out, right, at the time was Lieutenant General Dave Bassett. If you remember with him, DCMA commander, was former PEO twice, right, on the Army side. We had several discussions. I'm not a radio guy. I'm not a network guy, right? I'm an acquisition guy, right? So I understand the dollars, the relationships, the bureaucracy, right? The horse blanket, as we call it, of programmatics, right, on the Army, on the side of the DoW acquisition. I was looking for a company that I could come in and provide some immediate impact to from a leadership perspective, and to bring the acquisition knowledge into, and a company that really believed in giving back to soldiers, and really truly believed in their capability and technology. So, I had a couple meetings with several of the bigs that you're probably aware of. You name it, I probably talked to them. And then some totally off the wall things like banking industry, right? Just to kind of get my feel for where a fit would be. But ultimately, I went back to a small company with a single vision of networking the battlefield, right? And to really provide a connective fabric for soldiers to execute. I met the team. I think the bonus of being one of the many bonuses of being bootstrapped is that your CEO's vision carries you through the whole way. So once you buy into that vision, you understand that Dr. Ribbons and Dr. Homer really want to give a capability back to the soldier to be able to do things. It's easy to buy into that, right? 40% of the company or so are former military guys, whether they're signal folks from like 25 uniforms from Delta, or you name it, up and down every elite tactical unit, as well as standard Army units that like that I was in, right? So it kind of felt like home, even though you retire and go into another working company. So still giving back. My son's a lieutenant. I want to make sure he has the best tech he has, if something ever happens where he goes out there.
I love it. Yeah, my son's a captain, a special tactics guy. So
yeah, it's awesome.
I appreciate it, because you're doing things that help them out. No, that's super good. And I appreciate that, because some of those bigger companies, you have the network still is there, but that vision, it kind of gets lost because there's so many things on in vision. So that's, kudos to you. All right. So you've talked a lot about this, but let's hear, mesh networking, you're picturing Wi-Fi and like an office. What does the operational picture look like? What are you guys doing, and what is Wave Relay doing kind of at the tactical edge?
So think, I'll distinguish two things real quick: mesh versus MANET, right? We are a mobile ad hoc network versus a mesh. So you said it right there, right? A mesh is what's in your house, right? You have your router, you'll have the internet coming in, however it comes in, right? And then you may have some repeater nodes out there on your walls, right, to amplify signals. But ultimately, if your router dies, what happens? The whole thing dies, right? That's really one of the huge differences between a mesh and a MANET. On a MANET, every one of these guys, MPU5s, is its own router, right? So when people ask me how to describe it, right, as a non-signal dude, I'd say, look, it's like Waze. Like, if you think of it like Waze, right? When you open up your Waze app, you see all the Wazers, right? And everyone...
Waze, the driving app?
Yeah, the driving app. Think of it that way, right? As an easy example. Each driver car knows where the other ones are, right? And by knowing where every other car is, you're getting real-time feedback so that you can make decisions before the next exit comes up, where you may have to get off because there's a crash 10 miles down the road, right? Because every car is emitting sensor data or something into the Waze network. That's exactly what a MANET is, right? There's no fixed infrastructure. If one car falls out of the Waze app, all the rest of the cars are still going and they're still getting information. Same thing with MPU5. An MPU5 falls out of the network, it goes out of the network. As soon as it comes back into the network, it's back online, and all the other MPU5s know where they are. So no fixed infrastructure, right? If an MPU5 dies, the network still lives. It reheals itself. It goes around things. It's going to jump from car to car, or radio to radio in this instance, to get the signal where it needs to go. It's going to find the fastest way to get there, just like Waze will move you around a traffic jam. The radio will push the data around a traffic jam, whether that's EW, whether that's congested environments. It may go out 5G, it may go out from a SATCOM side, but it's going to get the data there the fastest and most efficient way it can. Just like Waze gets you to your location, that destination, the fastest way it can, right? So I like to use that comparison when talking about the MANET. So how does that then translate to a tactical network? Think of it, I'll give you an example from PCC5 that we saw. We had we had a tank go beyond line of sight, right? Like normal, if you're a tanker, I started as a tanker as a lieutenant. They went down into their battle position. In essence, you really can't see anything. The cupola will be up. You'll be able to see things as a tank commander, but you lose line of sight of that tank. Well, that tank was no longer emitting because nothing could see it, right? So we had to send a runner out there to tell that tank driver, hey, you need to back up and actually show yourself to the enemy because I need you to come back into the network, right? That's what we're trying to avoid, right? By putting nodes on vehicles or soldiers, you're allowing them to operate at the tactical edge operationally the way they are required to, and you're bringing in beyond line of sight capabilities like we have in here, as well as line of sight capabilities to keep everything on the network, whether it can be seen physically or not, right? So imagine, imagine when you start bringing in UGV platoons or unmanned ground vehicle platoons or unmanned aerial UAV platoons into the network. What typically used to be were siloed type things. Like I could have a UAS tied to me and my RDC or my EUD, my end user device. Think like a TAC phone, right? I'm looking at ATAC, I getting my feed on my phone, but 500 meters that way, there could be a UGV that has its own sensors that I'm not getting, right? What's the ideal thing there is if I can get all of those sensors on the same flat network, whether it's a UGV, whether it's a person, whether it's a vehicle, you're putting it all on a flat network running through our wave relay algorithms where we're efficiently moving that data correctly through the network to people who need it. And then everyone can see everything. It's a tactical superiority for decision-making is what we're trying to provide, whether it's at the enterprise or down at the tactical edge. So that's nirvana for us, right? A global communication fabric where humans, sensors, or whatever provide a knowledge base for people to make decisions faster, right? Without overwhelming them.
It seems like it took the DoD at the time a long time to embrace this. Was there a trigger that finally made this happen?
So that's a great question. I would say acquisition reform is one of them, right? When you, from our perspective as a company, we've been trying to break into conventional Army for 18 years, right? We started, like I said, SOCOM, elite units. We just didn't find that niche to get in, right? We're a network company. Well, what was the Army's always buying? Type 1 radios, right? Which are secure and have a great place in the A-PACE plan. There's in the PACE plan, right? The comms plan. No doubt, right? But they're not networks. So I think when you start bringing UAVs in mass into the market, when you start looking at UGVs and you realize that everything can have a camera and have a sensor, you start thinking, how do you then integrate all that data into a single COP, right? And you do things like, okay, well, for Palantir to run the data fabric at NGC2 that pushes the data into Anduril Lattice, something's got to ride under that to carry all that networking information and do it smartly and cleanly and efficiently, so that because you still run into physics, you still have a spectrum issue in lots of places wherever you go, right? There's spectrum constraints, right, that you just need to operate in. So using that data, giving that COP, it has to ride on a network, right? I think just the Army's starting to see it. I think one of the aha moments I know that happened at PCC5, like we previously talked, was testing things like augmented reality goggles on a tank commander, right? Typically that stuff would be like this, right? You'd have a cord going into the tank and it'd all be corded in, right? Well, we were using Wi-Fi off of our MPU-5 to what we call a personal transport 5, creating a local Wi-Fi bubble for the tank so that AR goggles and data could be flowing into the COP, the Common Operating Picture software over Wi-Fi, right? I think General Ellis saw that. I think Sec Army saw that out there, and they're like, General Rainey at the time said that's what we need to be having, a free flow of data, no more being tethered by wires. How do we create this network of things that's seamless, that works, right? That doesn't get bogged down to really give that tactical edge to the soldier as well as the commander.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was there any technology that changed that made this more operationally possible, or what was that journey look like?
From our perspective, we're on 5th generation MPU, right? Have you been out to Fort Carson at all? Have you been able to see any of what's going on out there with NGC2? Okay, so think of it as, I've never seen anything like this. I was part of Army Future Combat Systems back in the day, right? When Rumsfeld and doing the 18+1, the craziness of what that was, right? Way ahead of its time, but I think we're seeing that a little bit right now. Think of a massive base basketball stadium or basketball building with hundreds of vendors in there, right? So what we're seeing on the ground is integration of all these vendors, all tied to NGC2, trying to solve real world problems at the moment, right? You're not going back, writing a 10-page report 3 months later that's published through, you name it, test part of DOW. We're doing code fixes in real time at the point of impact overnight so that it can go get back out and get tested again. We were doing that. We brought our engineers out. All the companies out there are doing that, really making the fixes in real time, right? Especially when you go to like a software defined network where you can do firmware updates, right? And you could do it at scale. The ideal thing is to be able to push a firmware update across 700 of these all at once, right? Versus what I used to have to do when I was a lieutenant was get my key and put it into my SINGARs, and every day when the new key was issued, you have to go back and replug it and redo it, right? And you'd have to physically touch every single vehicle. So pushing those updates, seeing the point of need, getting in really good feedback from the soldiers on the ground, here's a problem, and then doing the fix and the update and redoing it again. It's iterative speed of fix that I've never seen before is what's going on right now. So really impressive.
That's cool. So from Persistent, is that your primary product, your only product, or?
No, so we have several products. This is the MPU-5. It is our flagship. It's a MIMO, multiple in, multiple out. We have 3 antennas, multi polarization on here. This is the flagship. This is really what NGC2 is using, a version of this. Also have embedded modules. Think taking the brains of this out and putting it into a much smaller form factor so that we can do counter UAS type things on missiles and things like that. But that forces integration with ecosystem partners so that know how to cool things, how to power it, right? Because this provides all of that in a one-stop solution where when you take the guts out, that requires a little bit more integration. We also have a GVR5, which is a dual band system. We use that at PCC5. In essence, you're going out 2 channels at the same time. We've worked on that with GDMS to provide the shell of it in the internals while we provide the smart routing piece of it. We're iterating like everyone else. We have a dual push to talk that takes analog voice and converts it to digital. And we have 16 talk groups through our dual push to talk that allows, you can have a fires channel on the left-hand side and command channel on the right, or you name it, right? There's a lot of really good technology out there that's coming either from us or from other companies. I think that is changing the game right now.
That's great. Is obviously that being your flagship, that's what you got awarded, 120 million ish.
Correct.
So that's not a program of record, right?
It is not a program of record. That's correct.
Which is a pretty big chunk to not be a program of record.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I haven't seen it when I was in that position side, but yeah.
What's your honest read? What needs to happen? What's going to happen between now and like a fielding decision?
Yeah. I referenced earlier that movement to PCC6. When I say we, I think it's Persistent as well as the collective group of key core vendors have been at Fort Carson since last August, doing IV Sting exercises. And think of an IV Sting as a field training exercise that's scaled from company to battalion to brigade to the full division that just went out into the field, testing the next generation command and control stack, right? And the stack, you have the transport layer in the bottom, right? You have the infrastructure layer, the integrated data layer, and then the app layer, right? All 4 of those have to work together for NGC2 to be successful. So, what happens next? I think the 4th Infantry Division Brigade is going through the box at PCC6 in July. I think the Army's going to take a hard look at what capabilities are being brought there, how they do against an OPFOR that goes against every other brigade in the Army, right? Let's see how they compete and how they perform. Lessons learned. I think we're by no means, no one's raising the flag saying, hey, NGC2 success, right? It's like I said, it's iterative. We're still doing improvements. Soldiers are still providing, a lot of really good feedback, whether it's on the app side of things. I want something that can, pull in, you name it. ammo data so that I can generate resupply requests through a data stream that rides over the network that then gets pushed back instead of having to use my radio to call back, right? It's just automatically getting sensors. All those things are continually evolving and iterating and just getting better. So, but I believe the Army will snap the chalk line after PCC 6. They'll say, okay, is NGC2 architecture good enough? What parts of it are good enough to push out to the rest of the force? I think I don't know if you heard or have seen this, but they're looking at 2 to 3 divisions a year for the next 3 years to get the NGC2 architecture out there, right? So that we can have tactical overmatch for near peer fights in the future.
All right, that makes sense. So in that, while you're looking, obviously you said you're still doing development. Where is, AI being integrated into tactical networks? It's on roadmaps everywhere. We've taken away the slide deck, vaporware, vapor. What's real? What's working today, and where do you think, this is going?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think what AI will do is remove the terminal data fatigue. I think that if we're not careful, we're going to dump on commanders and soldiers. And I mean by that is previously I referenced all the sensors that are going to be coming online into the network, whether it's UTVs, whether it's a soldier itself, vehicles, manned and unmanned. It's a lot of data. It's a lot of data. So, how that's visualized, how that's delivered to the soldier is going to be really important. But with that, and then you have terrestrial data coming in, geo and all that stuff. It's terabytes of data at some points. AI is that tool that's going to comb through that data. It's going to and it's going to make the smart decisions or help make the smart decisions on what data is really needed at the point of need. Right, comb through it all because it takes us too long. Whether that's air layer deconfliction, whether that's understanding maintenance type procedures even at a tank on how much longer that engine may last in a combat environment, and doing predictive analysis of that from ammo, maintenance, resupply, you name it. For us specifically, we're using AI on our current model, the MPU-5, to look at things like the contested spectrum, congested areas, EW pieces, trying to, through all the permutations of how our algorithm runs, what is the right answer in this unique circumstance, given all the inputs that are coming in, right? To then route things correctly, or to, see what the noise floor level is so that we can get things through certain ways, or pick which node. If you're going back to the Waze example, I may jump 10 cars ahead because that node is not congested and I'm able to see it and send the data there. I need something to make those smart decisions for us, right? And that's what AI is starting to deliver. I think it fundamentally, nirvana with AI in the future, it fundamentally shifts the soldier's reality from reacting to like an overwhelming chaotic volume of alerts or sensor information to something that's verified and operationally relevant for them to make decisions, right? I think that's where we want to go. And I think we're going to get there. It's just a matter of time right now. So
I think that's awesome. You guys have something good going there. Well, cool. We're going to start to wrap it up. I want to go through kind of a lightning round, get your perspective, because you've got unique perspectives, definitely. So just like a 30 seconds-ish and move on. Probably no commentary for me. What's the biggest myth or misconception about selling to the DOW?
That you can come up with a bespoke technology that solves problems and it can get put on contract immediately. Doesn't work like that.
That's how every that's every defense tech company out there right now. Come on.
But how do you take that from TRL level 3 laboratory to no doubt executing a problem and fixing a soldier's problem, right? I think there's some space. I think the Army Pit is doing some good stuff from an innovation and technology perspective of trying to build that, right? But I mean, I've seen it throughout my career, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm not disagreeing. That's for a lot of our listeners and guests that I've had, that's what we're doing, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
That's Tech Surge, hardest lesson you've learned on the, as a commercial side of defense, this defense company perspective?
For me, it's getting into the space, doing a $120 million contract, being a small business and growing, and then how do you marry? It's not just the technical evolution of your product. It's the internal logistical engineering piece of some of the things you're talking about, long lead items, supply chain, manufacturing capacity. How do you scale if the Army wants you to scale? How do I marry that in 2-year tranches versus 5-year tranches, right? You have to be cognizant of, yes, I got amazing technology, but 2, you have to be able to scale to what the Army wants and what they need. Otherwise, they're just going to move on, right? Those 2 things have to come together. So for small businesses, that's hard. And I think that's a never-ending risk struggle, I think, for us as we look at where things are going in the future to make sure that we're postured correctly to be there. So that's probably the hardest nut I think we're trying to crack right now.
If you were to give a piece of advice to other leaders that are trying to build a defense tech company, what would it be?
I would say go to the soldier, find out what their problems are, right? By the time those problems reach, go through the JUONS process or wherever the operational needs statement process is, or wherever the Army's going with it now, it's almost too late, right? Because there's another problem there that you probably need to solve. And a lot of those are bespoke problems. So you can find either bespoke problems or you can find, common problems that are throughout. You can figure out what you want to solve, right? And what the problem is. But really, I mean, that's the whole point of all this is solving the edge case user or the commander's problem. That's what's going to win the day, right? And that's especially in this environment where commanders' requirements and what they're saying is impacting the acquisition side a lot more than what it used to. That's where I would start there.
Okay. What's the name of sacred cow in defense tech you think would be proven false?
I think that as we go through the security side of things, CMMC, you name it, all this stuff, I think there's maybe the misunderstanding that Type 1 is the sacred cow of all things that are needed to do secret and above level classification. I think there's not enough understanding of some of the security side that the financial industry does that we have in our networks for Persistent, right? And the commercial solutions for classified side of the NSA, which is Type 1 equivalent. I think there's going to be a shift there. It's going to take some time for people to understand and maybe trust it. But when you're using the same security algorithms that, protect probably your number one asset, which is your wealth, right, inside your banks, I think there could be a play there on the Army or the tactical side and the secret level side of operations, whether it's in the kill chain or fires and such, right? It's just going to take a little time, but I think we'll get there.
And where do you think the biggest opportunity in defense is right now?
Definitely between tactical edge compute and autonomy. I think that's that interdiction or that integration, the company that can figure that out because of the amount of moving tech out, doing decisions at the edge puts less burden into the network, lowers the bandwidth requirements. You're making decisions at the edge. You're having a network that can bring that data back in. I think that's the massive piece of it, right? That people are going to start going after and already are. I think we see that on the UGV side, the autonomy side of the networks. Massive area of growth.
All right. Well, Jon, that's been fantastic. We've run out of time, but before we wrap up, if folks want to follow you or follow Persistent, how best would they do that?
Yeah, so you can find us on LinkedIn, Persistent Systems LLC. There's another Persistent Systems, but that's not us, right? So Persistent Systems LLC, you'll see the Wave Relay logo. That's one way to do it. Or I am on LinkedIn as well. You can search me up there, Jon Patrick, VP of Persistent Systems, Army SOCOM.
Super good. Well, the fact that you were able to show both sides of the acquisition table is amazing. Exactly the perspective we're looking for on this show. So it's been awesome. I love what you guys are doing. And until we meet in Italy one more time.
Sounds great, Dave. Thanks.
Take care. Thank you.